Hello, everybody. My name is Angel Scott, and today I will be discussing my reading story or my reading summary on the narrative and life of Frederick Douglass. Okay, so like I've mentioned, it's a narrative, so it's a personal account of Frederick describing his experiences in slavery, how he witnessed violence and abuse and all these traumatic experiences, which essentially was the reason he wanted to he did escape slavery. So Frederick Douglass was born into slavery. His mother was a slave. His dad was believed to be one of the slaveholders, well, one of the masters. He never really knew, but it was rumored that his dad was one of the masters. But he didn't have a personal connection with his mom. Because at the age of 1, he was separated, and this was pretty much tradition for slaveholders to do. They would separate the infants from their mom at a very early age, and there was a lack of relationship and connection created between the two, and between child and mother. Frederick also didn't have a relationship with his siblings as well. But he told how once his mother did die, and he had learned, which it was ages after that he had learned that she did die, he didn't feel any type of way because they didn't have a relationship. And Frederick pretty much throughout the narrative, he encounters different slaveholders and how most of them are cruel, most of them are abusive, and most physically and mentally abusive, verbally abusive. It's a lot of violence. But he pretty much talks about and emphasizes violence. But he also tells of slavery, what it's like in the plantation versus like in the city. For example, the most pivotal difference is slaves pretty much, they aren't as restricted in the city. And he also tells how he learns to read and write in the city. Douglass is sent to be a slave in the city, and once he's sent to be a slave, he meets his new mistress, and his new mistress seems very different. Like when she first sees him upon first encounter, she's very, she's like none other slave. I mean, Douglass even mentioned that when he first, he even mentioned that the meanest slave would be just happy to see her. Like he said she had the kindest of heart and finest of feelings. But this initial, introduction was not, it wasn't forever. It wasn't consistent with who she developed to be or who she just really was. So initially she taught Douglass how to read. She taught him how to spell. And Douglass was extremely thankful for this. He mentioned how this, once he learned about reading and writing, it was essential to him escaping slavery. And throughout the city, he was also, because once she did learn, her husband told her that once you teach a slave, you can't keep a slave, in simple terms. So once she learns of this, she stops, and Douglass is pretty much forced to learn on his own. So he sneaks around. He even exchanged bread with the Baltimore boys to learn, because he placed a heavy emphasis and highlighted how education was very valuable to him, and knowledge was just, the key to escaping. So he also encounters with many other slaveholders. Well, he teaches himself how to write too, and he had to teach himself with timber. And so Douglass was pretty much determined. He was very much persistent and consistent. So he, like I said, he encounters with a lot of different other slaveholders before he eventually escapes. And during his encounters, he has this encounter with Mr. Covey, and Mr. Covey is known to break a slave, pretty much break them spiritually and no, not even spiritually, break them physically and mentally. So Douglas even says that once this occurs, his will to want to escape slavery kind of diverted. He just wanted to become submissive because he was truly broken. But then Douglas, he gains his strength. He even fights back Mr. Covey. Mr. Covey. And he also introduces religion and how a lot of many different slaveholders use religion as validation to slavery. And Douglas, he didn't like that. So Douglas devises a plan with several other slaves to leave, to escape. And he creates a passport. Well, not a passport. He creates a pass because slaves have to have passes everywhere they went or they would be subjected to escaping. But yeah, so Frederick Douglass creates a pass. They're eventually caught because somebody had to be an inside, snitch or something like that. But, he's sent to jail and just a lot of things occur until where he finally can escape slavery. And he also tells a story about how grandmothers are very pivotal to slaveholders, but yet they are not vital. They are not valuable to them. Like they upbring a slaveholder, they watch them throughout generations, but yet when they're very old, they're of no value. So they are sent out. Specifically, one grandmother, she was sent out and she was blind, so she was sent out into the woods and to live in this house, and pretty much leaving her to die. And so there are plenty of events as well as encounters that Douglas experienced to help him want to escape slavery, or to just be crucial to him escaping slavery. For his life in the city pretty much shaped him, and if it wasn't for his city life, we probably wouldn't have known Douglas. And additionally, Douglas, was fortunate enough to escape by putting on a Navy, it was some type of militia uniform to escape slavery, and he succeeded at doing that. And I would just definitely say this was an overall great narrative of a personal account of slavery, because I learned so much. And even reading this again, because this was my first time reading the narrative and life of Frederick Douglass, but even reading again as older, way more mature, I'm finally under to comprehend way more stuff. And I definitely say I like how Frederick became more dominant, because I know you could get killed at any moment of being a slave, but when he fought Mr. Covey, it's like something was summoned in him to revert to the person that he was, like very consistent, very persistent in his will to want to escape slavery. So I say that was my favorite part. But I say my least favorite part is when Miss Sophia Odd, because from first introduction, she's depicted as being this nice woman, but eventually she turns, or who knows, she could have been like this the whole time, but we see her divert to a different individual, into someone who's because I know women at that time didn't have dominion. They listened merely to their husbands, but it was just like she stopped him from teaching. She became such a nice person to it's just like evil was taught, and that's what I didn't like. But overall, the narrative was great. It's written by Frederick Douglass, but Frederick had to have some white men who were also abolitionists, because Frederick was an abolitionist. He became an abolitionist, once he escaped slavery. So he had some abolitionists, or white abolitionists, to just be like, hey, there was a black man that wrote this, to pretty much validate that Frederick wrote the narrative. So yeah, it was very interesting. I liked it very much. and you all have a great day. Thank you.